give the floor to the representative of the Russian Federation.
Thank you, Mr. President. We note with regret that the quality of the report of the High Representative in BNH time after time continues to worsen. It is clear that Mr. Inska is striving to tailor his assessments about developments in the country to tailor those to what suit him and other supporters of endless maintenance of the foreign protectorate in BNH, to the notion of inviolability of the government structures and the political class as a whole. This approach, in our view, is at its root misguided, misleading, disrespectful towards the Bosnians, and unrealistic. BNH, despite the painful legacy of the conflicts in 1992 to 1995, is gradually developing socioeconomically. The GDP is growing, export and income for the population are growing, unemployment is being reduced. Once again, in line with democratic standards, general elections were held on 7 October. This has been confirmed by the assessments issued by international observers of the OSCE. Foreign policy is being conducted that is based on a balance of interest of the Bosnian parties. In 2010 to 2011, Sarajevo successfully dealt with the functions of non-permanent membership at the UN Security Council. In 2015, it chaired the Committee of the Council of Ministers, European Council of Ministers. As with any state, problems arise. These, however, but the Bosnians are by no means insurmountable. The successful experience of Okrug Brčko, where since 2012 what was frozen was the activities of the foreign supervisor, clearly shows that the Office of the High Representative for BNH is a relic of the past. For what is worse, its presence alone obstructs domestic dialogue and stokes welfare sentiment in a certain part of the establishment. For almost 10 years of presence in the BNH, the High Representative has abused the offices of the resources of the office for the advancement of NATO and EU agendas, as well as for personal settling accounts with Bosniak stakeholders who have acknowledged the pointlessness of the protectorate. And this instead of a fulfillment of the tasks assigned to him for the implementation of civilian aspects of the peace agreement. We urge the High Representative in future not to allow tendentious comments vis-a-vis certain political parties in the country on the eve of elections, as occurred when there was an interview with Mr. Minska with the Wiener Zeitung and Austrian newspaper on 2 October, which is widely disseminated among Bosnian media outlets. In it, the High Representative leveled one-sided criticism against the major Bosniak party, the Union of Independent Social Democrats, thereby breaching all norms of democracy and his own mandate, de facto joining the election campaign on the side of the opposition. The smearing of Bosnian, Serb, and Croat leaders is compounded by erosion of Dayton and attempts to centralize the country. These have long morphed into a goal in itself for the High Representative. The High Representative is not shying away from referring in his recent report to unverified media accounts, or is simply issuing far-reaching conclusions, off-the-mark conclusions, so to speak. For example, he has undertaken to expound on the alleged rampant corruption and the inability of the country's authorities to combat it, basing himself on blatantly politicized and unsubstantiated, which means not acceptable in a report, a decision of the U.S. Department to include the Bosnian Serb parliamentarian Nicole Sprica in the restrictive list on the eve of elections in BNH. The High Representative has been exploiting the tragic death of the student David Dragivecic so as to portray what occurred as some kind of a systemic flaw within Republika Srpska judiciary. These assessments, in our view, are cynical and reckless and irresponsible. those colleagues who wish to familiarize themselves with a more balanced and factual picture of what is taking place in BNH, once again, we recommend that they read the report of the government of Republika Srpska, which has been drafted as per tradition in Banja Luka for today's meeting. We urge the High Representative to abandon a one-sided self-inclusion in domestic Bosnian political games and to do what has been assigned to him, that is, implementation of the 5+2 plan, which the office has cast so far aside that this task is being mentioned only in passing as some kind of a secondary aspect. A blatant flaw in the Office of the High Representative, in our view, is the effective lack of a meaningful analysis about possible ways to end the crisis in Federation of BNH. This related to the exclusion of from the current version of the BNH elections law for the procedure of filling the High Chamber of the Bosnia and Herzegovina Parliament. This situation is fraught with issues regarding composition of the House of Peoples of the Parliamentary Assembly of BNH and the establishment of the president and members of the government of the Federation. We trust that the relevant full-fledged calculations will be drafted by the Office of the High Representative at least for early December to coincide with the meeting of the Steering Board on the Peace Implementation Council. Turning to Russian policy in Bosnian settlements, we continue to focus on doing everything possible to facilitate compliance with Dayton and to develop mutually beneficial dialogue with Bosnia and Herzegovina. Our message is about the importance of respect for Bosnian and Herzegovina sovereignty and territorial integrity, as well as what are stipulated in the peace agreement: broad authority for the two entities and equal rights for the three constituent peoples. These were welcomed by all Bosnian parties during a working visit of the Russian Foreign Minister Sergei Lavrov to BNH on 21 September 2018. We believe that the time for the foreign protectorate is irrevocably behind us. The role of the international community in BNH needs to be to facilitate and assist Bosnians in expansion of shared interest and seeking unique compromise solutions to problematic issues. These include reform of the judiciary and withdrawal of foreign specialists from the composition of the constitutional court of the country. What merits attention is the idea of Bosnian Croats to fine-tune the electoral system in BNH. These would provide sufficient guarantees for filling senior leadership positions exclusively with the legitimate representatives of each of BNH's constituent peoples. Unfortunately, during the recent elections in BNH, a member of the Presidium of Bosnian BNH from the Croats was once again elected by the votes of the Bosnian majority. It would be desirable for the Bosnians to reach agreement about how to prevent this practice in the future. It is not acceptable to artificially step up pressure on the Republic of Srpska within BNH and its legitimately elected leaders. We principally object to unilateral sanctions against Bosnian Serb leaders. In response to my British colleague, I should like to confirm that the Russian Federation, as a member of the contact group of the steering board on BNH, is committed to stability and development in Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, we did not sign on to any obligations whatsoever to drag the country into European Euro-Atlantic structures. This is not our affair, and nor is it yours. This is the affair of the peoples residing in Bosnia and Herzegovina. However, we certainly do not agree with the policy of dragging BNH into NATO. Such action only stoke tensions within the country, detract Bosnian sides from working on the reform track. What had been stipulated in the 1995 peace agreement, namely the consensus on domestic political issues, in this case is not achievable due to the principled position of Bosnian Serbs who can not consider establishment of alliance-based divisive lines between Republika Srpska and Serbia. We stand alongside many European states and agree with them about the gravity of the threat of proliferation in BNH of radical extremist ideas. The activities of the Islamic underground needs to be stamped out by the country's competent structures, including within the context of regional cooperation. Thank you.
I thank the representative of the Russian Federation.